Here we go again. It is snowing in Kansas City. We got at least a couple of inches on the ground right now. The roads not in great shape, but it is a powdery snow. There is no ice as far as I can tell underneath that snow. So coming in on 435 this morning, going about 30, 35 miles an hour. There's no tracks, though. You're not going to see where you're going. There is blowing snow as well. So definitely want to take your time if you do have to go in today. We are not dealing with what we were dealing with 5 weeks ago. That's the good news. I mean, we're all scarred from that snowmageddon, blizzard, ice storm we had in early January. This is not that. That being said, you still want to take plenty of time this morning if you have to go out. I know schools are closed all over the metro today, so take it easy. We had Mark up in the old hotel down the street last night, Mark, so you hang in there all right, my man?
Yep, watched the end of the KU game, did my taxes, and now ready to go.
Wait, gosh, now you're making me feel like a bum. You did your taxes? You're all done for the year?
Yeah, I told my wife, I said, you know what, if I have to leave you with the 3 kids, I'll at least go do the taxes so I can feel like I'm getting something accomplished.
Oh, gosh, what a guy.
Such a nice man.
What a guy. So your taxes are done, and you're all set for the year.
Yeah, they even accepted. I got a text at about 5 o'clock this morning. It said, your Kansas taxes were accepted.
Okay. Are you getting a little back from the state and Uncle Sam there, or what do you got going on? You owe money, or are you trying to break even?
I had to pay Kansas just a little bit.
Okay.
And I got a decent chunk from the federal.
Okay. All right. Good for you, man. Good for you. Well, Mark's having a great morning. Spends the night in a hotel, KU wins, and his taxes are done. Nice job. Wow. This guy, I'll tell you. Man, I didn't have that kind of a night. I just went to sleep hoping I could get in here this morning, which I did. But I will tell you, the worst part from driving this morning is I was going about, like I said, 30, 35. And as is always the case, it's like clockwork. Got a couple of heroes in the left lane. Hey, man, I got 4-wheel drive. I'm going 50. It's a beautiful day out. When they would blow past you, the wind, and it's not super windy, but it's windy enough, and the snow is powdery enough where there would be a temporary kind of whiteout because the wheels would kick up the snow as they were blowing past you in the left lane, and I'd have to turn my wipers on really quickly to get it kind of out of the way because that wind was kicking up the snow, and it was blowing, and it created this like 4 to 5 second whiteout condition. Now, there were not many cars on the road, so I wasn't overly concerned about it. I knew it was in front of me, but that's where it can get dicey this morning because the plows have not been out there yet today. So just give yourself plenty of time. You will be okay if you have to go out, but, if you can stay in, that's probably for the best. Now, in the meantime, we're going to talk to Nathan Brennan, KCTV5. He will be here coming up in about 10 minutes or so. He's been driving all over the metro this morning, so he'll tell you the good spots, the bad spots, what to keep an eye out for, and much more when we talk to him here in about 10 minutes or so. And then Kansas City City Manager Brian Platt will join us at 6:35 this morning and get us the update on how Kansas City is handling this latest snowstorm. Expectations are basically right around 5 to 6 inches for most of the metro. That is down from the 5 to 10 we were expecting. So numbers have come down. That's because the storm expected to move out faster than originally anticipated. Should be done by about early to mid-afternoon, depending on where you're at. But right now, it is the thick of this storm, so it's coming down heavy, and the roads are very, very slow this morning. Give yourself plenty of time, and you can just stream us on the phone if you're working from home today, KCMO Talk Radio app, iHeart app, or, of course, the TuneIn app. So yesterday, I received this email from my Congresswoman, Sharice Davids. Do you get the Sharice Davids emails, Mark, in your personal or work email? I get them in both, so I see them all the time.
I get them randomly. I haven't seen one this morning, but...
Oh, well, this one came in yesterday at about lunchtime, so you might have
gone to the junk mail.
It might have gone to your junk mail. That's okay. Well, if you are a constituent of Sharice Davids, 3rd District, Kansas side of the state line, you probably get these emails. And I thought it was fascinating because she sends this email out, and the headline is urgent. Elon Musk and budget survey. And it says, "Hi, Pete." Hello, Sharice. I know good ideas can come from Republicans and Democrats. That includes, there she goes, middle of the road. That includes cutting wasteful spending. Both parties should work to lower our debt. But this requires pragmatism, not extremism. An unelected billionaire should not be able to possibly access Kansans' private information or be able to possibly interrupt Social Security and Medicare payments that Kansans depend on to live safe, healthy lives. I know this issue can raise strong feelings. As your representative, it's important for me to always listen to you. Please click below to begin taking my survey. Here's the question in the email from Sharice Davids in the survey. Quote, how do you think the United States government should address the nation's budget? And there are three questions, or three options on this question. Option one, bipartisan compromise by the people's representatives in the House and the Senate. Option two, entrusting Elon Musk. Option three, I don't know. Well, if that's not a trick question that's desired to get a specific outcome, I don't know what is. Option one, bipartisan compromise by the people's representatives in the House and the Senate. Option two, entrusting Elon Musk. The email goes on to say, Mr. Musk is an unelected billionaire. I'm very concerned his access to federal payment systems could let him see Kansans' private information. I'm also concerned this could lead to interruptions of Social Security and Medicare payments. Spare me. Please, Congresswoman, spare me. I read this whole email. You know what's interesting? Trump's name doesn't come up once. Elon Musk is their new boogeyman. It's not Trump. They've given up on trying to take down Donald Trump. Now their boogeyman is Elon Musk. And I love how suddenly it's the Democratic Party that is concerned about unelected officials wielding power in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's that right there is comical. There are 2 million federal employees. Between them and appointed judges, that is the swamp right there in Washington, D.C. When you talk about the swamp, that's really at its core what you're talking about. Unelected, nameless, faceless bureaucrats combined with judges who are doing the bidding of the swamp itself. And now Elon Musk, who may be this generation's Einstein, shows up and is like, hey, I think we can seriously clean this budget up. And it doesn't take as long as the politicians insist it's going to take. Well, okay, that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know many Americans that would be or should be against that. And that's Republican or Democrat, right? I mean, if you're talking about figuring out where the fraud, the wasteful spending, and the abuseful spending is, even if you vote for Democrats, why would you be against that? Why is that something that you would not want to find out from your government? And with all due respect to the Congresswoman, the people's representatives haven't done a damn thing on this front for decades. We're $36 trillion in debt. And I got to listen to Sharice Davids put out an email here and say, we need bipartisan compromise to fix the budget. You've been in office since 2018. What leadership have you shown on this front? I mean, give me an honest answer. What leadership have you shown on this front? And on top of that, why would I entrust somebody whose background, with all due respect, is relatively limited on issues like budgeting compared to Elon Musk's, who has shown a willingness in the private sector with all of his businesses, Tesla, X, SpaceX, the list goes on, and has built some of the great companies of the current generation. Why would I not give him a chance when the duly elected president who won the popular vote and had a historical electoral college landslide victory for a Republican has said, you know what, you're in charge of this. I want to see what we can do to get this deficit down and try to start reducing this debt in some capacity. So there's twofold here with this email sent out by Congresswoman Davids. One is the way that Trump's name never shows up and Elon has been their boogeyman. And number two, the presumption that people are scared off by this unelected billionaire Elon Musk. I will have audio throughout the morning I will play for you because Elon was speaking yesterday in the Oval Office. And frankly, it is just total common sense. It's not super conservative. It's not like uber Republican. It's not right wing. It's just common sense that you apply in the private sector every single day. But God forbid you apply it to government and it's like suddenly a constitutional crisis. We'll get to more of it here on KCMO, a snowy Wednesday morning across Kansas City. Nathan Brennan, KCTV5, he's out on the roads. He'll give us an update here around the metro on 95.7 FM. Brian Platt, Kansas City City Manager, is also going to be here this hour on KCMO.
On Tuesday's Guy Benson Show, Howie Kurtz on some media ethics. Are news outlets actively helping criminal aliens escape?
Coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Well, it's a Wednesday morning. The snow is falling across Kansas City, and we're glad you're here on KCMO Talk Radio. And our buddy Nathan Brennan, KCTV5 reporter, has had a busy morning already. As always, he is the man all over the roads of Kansas City. Nathan, good morning. What are you seeing out there?
Well, good morning to you, Pete. Always great to be on your program this early in the morning. And fortunately for me, I'm telling everyone to stay inside while I'm outside. The snow is falling. The wind is blowing. It is actually kind of a winter wonderland. It's kind of beautiful in Kansas City, but don't let that fool you because definitely some slick conditions that we're seeing so far. So we're just off the 71 highway near 22nd Street over by Children's Mercy. We've noticed that there's a lot of packed snow both on the highway, overpasses, ramps, places like that. So definitely a heads up as you start your morning commute. Fortunately, that snowstorm that we had in January, I would say we saw a lot more ice that time around. This is the white, fluffy, powdery snow, so not as much ice, but definitely going to slow down your morning commute and just be aware of those slick spots because they'll catch up on you.
Where have you been so far this morning?
Well, getting into work, it was actually probably around 3 o'clock this morning. I took I-35 south. Not too bad conditions when I got out this morning. I know that we've been talking about a lot worse conditions throughout the morning as we've kind of gotten into the morning rush hour. We've been mainly in the KCMO area. Again, like I said, right now we're at 71 Highway, 22nd Street, primarily KCMO. Will say, too, Pete, shout out to the crews in Kansas City, Missouri. We have seen a couple plows out on the roads this morning.
Is that right? Already. We're going to talk to City Manager Brian Platt here in about 10 minutes. So you're saying that I should give him some props and tell his crew that they're doing a great job so far in the early morning hours because Kansas, at least as of about 90 minutes ago, Kansas was not touched.
Yeah, I definitely would give him a bit of a shout out, and I can confirm boots on the ground. We have seen snowplows out on the road, so I know they are putting forth some type of effort here this morning.
All right, that's very good. Very good. So right now you're on the Missouri side of things. Where are you going to be heading around the metro this morning?
So we're staying primarily here for the next hour or so because they decided they did not want to put me in the weather tracker today. They said, how cold and miserable can we make Nathan this morning? We're going to throw him outside. So I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate to be stuck in this situation this morning. So for the next hour or so, we'll be in Missouri. I know that we're thinking about heading over to a salt dome on the Kansas side, crossing state lines here in the next hour or so. So we'll be on both sides of the state line around the entire metro. But again, if you head out the door this morning, you're starting your morning commute, give yourself some extra time. We're seeing these snow-packed roads. It will be slick. Fortunately, though, what we saw last January, I don't think we're talking about any historic type of snowstorm.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Roads are much better. Couldn't be much worse than last month, but definitely better. So with that, how are the folks driving out there? Are you seeing some yahoos or are people being okay?
Pete, I'm glad that you brought that up because, yes, I have seen a Yahoo this morning. So, again, a heads up if you're going over an overpass, bridges, on and off ramps. That's where you're not going to see the ice as much, but those areas see a lot more ice. There was a guy that really decided he wanted to show off his muffler this morning, Pete. So he was flying through that overpass, muffler blaring this morning. That is incredibly dangerous. Please, if you're on an overpass bridge, do not floor it. Don't show off your muffler because those spots specifically are very, very dangerous in these conditions.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't turn Nathan on, all right? If you want to pick him up, there are different ways and better ways to do it. I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, listen, man, keep up the great work. We'd love to check in with you throughout the morning, and we'll make sure that people are staying safe out there. We appreciate it, Nathan.
Appreciate you as always. Thank you, Pete.
All right, Nathan Brennan, KCTV5. Doing good work there. He's right now on the Missouri side of the state line on KCMO 95.7 FM. But only seeing one, that's pretty good. I mean, so far, that's pretty good. I only saw one coming in this morning at about 4:45, 5 o'clock, give or take, right in there. Taking my time, 30 miles an hour, down 435. Not all that bad. I mean, not good, but not awful if you take your time there, Mark.
Yeah, I was, just around the corner, but I was the first one to make tracks through Corporate Woods, so I thought that was kind of fun.
Yes, you were the first guy.
Yeah, I don't often get to be the first one. Usually through my neighborhood, there's been some people driving through, but Corporate Woods right over here, first tracks.
First tracks. Oh, man. Did you take a picture of it for posterity or no?
I couldn't. I mean,
A little too dark.
I could have, I guess, but I was driving. So
Yeah, I know. I figured you'd get one on the way into the building or something like
I
that.
should have.
Yeah,
I missed my opportunity.
you did. It's all right. You'll be fine. There'll be another opportunity for you, Mark. I promise. I promise. The music stations, they can kind of do their little thing from home. But for us, this is obviously, every day is a big day right now. The news cycle's just going bonkers. But especially when you think about a day like today, from a news perspective, we're going to be here. That's why Mark was up in the big hotel last night, and I was able to make my way in. Really no problem. Just got to give yourself some extra time if you're getting around and have to be out this morning. Most schools, obviously, doing either virtual learning or just closed today. Now, Mark, you had the big parent-teacher conference. Is it canceled yet?
I still need to look at the email for that.
Okay.
We actually rescheduled one that was supposed to be today and went on Monday. So,
Mark was hoping today was going to be a Super Bowl rally.
Yeah.
So he was trying to weasel his way out of a parent-teacher conference. But now you might have to go to it in 5 inches of snow.
Potentially.
We'll see how it plays out. It's great to have you here on KCMO 95.7 FM, always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Glad you're a part of it. Coming up, we are going to hear from Brian Platt. He is the Kansas City, Missouri city manager. Listen, I thought overall, Kansas City, Missouri, which has had a history of doing an awful job when it comes to snowstorms, all things considered, with a historic storm last month, did a pretty good job. So this today should be child's play, right? We'll get the update from the city manager, Brian Platt, and then get to the 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 a.m. hour coming up on KCMO.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, crews already out working hard across Kansas City here in the 6 o'clock hour as the snow is falling, and we've got another winter storm, of course, we're dealing with in Kansas City. Brian Platts, the Kansas City city manager, he is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Brian, good morning. What's the morning been like so far for you and the crews out there?
Well, crews have been out for a couple days now, doing what they do. We're getting a lot of practice at this, which is a good thing. And every storm, we learn a little bit about how to be a little bit better everywhere. The snow started falling a little harder around 3, 4 in the morning. And so we switched to the plowing operation, meaning we got our blades dropped. We're stopping the salting for a moment until we can get the streets fully clear. And then we'll go ahead and continue salting after that.
So not nearly the ice situation we dealt with last month, of course. So how does that change the preparation and, of course, the plan of attack for the morning?
Yeah, our plan is very straightforward, and it's the same approach for every storm. We go out 36 hours, 24 to 36 hours before we expect accumulation to start, and we're pre-treating all of our roads. Once we get enough accumulation to plow, we start plowing. Once the roads are clear, we come back with some salt to prevent that refreeze. The ice just makes it take longer, and the volume of snow that we got that last storm made it take exceptionally long.
Yeah, okay. So this morning, you're already out. Blades are on the streets. People will notice them going around. What's one thing you want to make sure that Kansas Cityans are aware of, or anyone who's traveling through town this morning?
Look, the roads are slick. I mean, the snow just really started to come down a couple hours ago. It's going to take us some time to get the roads clear. We ask people just take a moment. If you can wait on getting out of the house this morning, if you can wait on that extra trip, stay off the roads. It's mostly to make sure that we can clear the roads. If there are cars on the roads, it's harder to plow around them. And so we just ask people to stay off the roads. And also, there's a lot of slick spots right now just because there's a lot of snow that we just have to catch up with.
What are you seeing out there in terms of traveler safety? Are you seeing what you expected with fewer people on the roads, or is it busier than you expected?
You know, it's always busier than we expect. Everyone knows the snow is coming, and everyone sees it out the window, and yet everyone's still out there. I think the highways are a challenge, as they have been in the last few storms. Our side streets are looking okay, but again, the snow really just started coming down, so it's just going to take us a moment.
Now, we've got, obviously, pretty darn cold temperatures as well. We're in the high teens, low 20s around the metro. So how does that change what kind of salt you guys use and how effective that salt is on the roads?
Yeah, the standard salt that a lot of jurisdictions use doesn't really work below like 20 degrees or so. We've got this different type of salt that we use. It's blue. It's magnesium chloride. It's not only better for the environment, it's less corrosive for cars and trucks, but it also works much better at those lower temperatures. So that's what we put out there on all of our neighborhood streets and most of our main roads already. It's just the standard practice for us now, and that's what we'll be using throughout the storm.
I'm not trying to make you or the department look bad in any way, but is that a more expensive salt? Is it significantly more expensive, or is it just, I mean, if it's safer for the cars, more environmentally friendly, and works better, is it just an expense that's worth spending more money on?
It is more expensive. It's harder to use. It doesn't come in. We have to mix it with the regular salt that we use. And so that's the give and take. It's not something that a lot of people use in general. So we're all just starting to learn what's the best way to put it out there and store it and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, the cost is the real thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, what about trash pickup and things like that? Any delays on that this week?
Trash is on schedule. We have closed our city facilities for the day, and we're working remotely. So if you've got a public meeting or an appointment you had for a city service, just check with whoever it was to make sure that you can still access that service. But for the most part, and there's a long list of obviously school closures and other types of facilities that we don't control. But yeah, I mean, we're really just trying to keep people off the roads right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Brian Platt, Kansas City, Missouri city manager. Thanks for what your crew is doing out there. We appreciate it, and we'll try to check in later this morning.
Sounds good. Talk to you.
All right. Brian Platt on KCMO 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. On a snowy Wednesday morning, take your time. I was getting in at about 30, 35 miles an hour today. Don't try to set any records if you got to be on the roads, and just definitely want to take your time this morning. We'll get to the 6 at 6 coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio. Did you see this moment You probably didn't. I just happened to stumble upon it. Mark, you were watching the KU game last night, so you weren't flipping around to CNN? You didn't see this?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just kind of stumbled upon it last night. Saw K-State get a big win at Arizona, or against Arizona at home. KU took care of business against Colorado. But then CNN may have had the moment of the night when Anderson Cooper was having a back and forth about Elon Musk and Doge and cleaning up government waste and fraud and abuse with Chris Sununu. Now, Chris Sununu is not like a MAGA guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's the former governor of New Hampshire. He actually was an anti-Trump guy, and not like super hardcore anti-Trump, but he was big on Ron DeSantis. He was on the DeSantis train for a little bit there when he was in the mix a couple of years ago running for president. But Chris Sununu is also a common sense guy. And Chris Sununu is someone who says, hey, if Elon Musk can help us figure out where the wasteful spending is in the country, and God knows we have plenty of it with a $2 trillion deficit, $36 trillion in debt, this seems like pretty much common sense. So he's on CNN last night with Anderson Cooper, and Anderson Cooper dropped an expletive on him. Take a listen.
It's 23 days in here, guys. 23 days. You were talking about 2.3 billion that was saved last year. These guys are saving 2.3 billion a day.
Right, but
it's incredible.
That's what they're saying.
But
where's the proof?
You're waiting. You're not going to be satisfied till he shows up with 10,000 pages. I
No,
think
but
in
we're
about
talking about
10,000
pages.
Yeah.
He's giving very specific things,
Yes, he's giving
but
very
he's not
specific
actually giving any evidence of that.
It's all going to come because what they also said was, if we have to go to Congress, we'll go to Congress.
Right, but
we'll show where it is.
Some of the details that have come out, like the $59 million spent on luxury hotels, it's actually not.
Talking about the FEMA money that was abused for migrants.
Yeah.
FEMA money for migrants. That's okay now.
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be the portrayal. What I'm saying is the portrayal by him is just not factually accurate. He's talking about luxury hotels. I'm not a big look. I was in Hurricane
Until
Katrina.
he sends you a
I
personal
saw what
text,
FEMA
you're
does.
not gonna believe it. I get it.
I think the issue too is these are congressionally appropriated funds.
Anderson Cooper saying to Chris Sununu, former New Hampshire governor, on CNN, don't be a bleep. That was quite a moment. And it's especially funny with Jeffrey Toobin sitting next to Chris Sununu as that's happening. You may recall Jeffrey Toobin was the guy who, what year would that have been? I don't know, 3 years ago maybe, was caught on a Zoom call starting to pleasure himself. You remember, were you part of the show for that, Mark? Were you here yet when that happened?
I think it was right before. I think it was late 2020 maybe because it was all the Zoom stuff,
Yeah, you're right. It was. It was the fall of, it was almost 5 years ago that Zooming with Toobin became a thing. I forgot about, oh gosh, man, time does fly when you're having a good time like we are every morning on KCMO.
We definitely talked about it when I got here.
Oh,
it was still funny.
Oh, it's been 5 years and it's still funny. Maybe that says more about my sophomoric sense of humor sometimes. But Anderson Cooper calling Chris Sununu a D while Toobin's sitting there next to him with the deer in the headlights look. Hey, Jeff, keep those hands above the table, buddy. That's all I'm asking from you. Keep those hands above the table. I want to see those hands, Jeff. That's a rule if you're going to be back on CNN. It's got to be in his contract. He took a leave of absence, and then CNN actually brought this guy back. I'll never forget that Zoom call. They're like, Jeff, your camera's on. Stop, Jeff. And now it's like nothing ever happened. Just sitting there on the panel as Anderson Cooper's calling other panelists the D word. Man, I'm telling you what. When you don't have the argument on your side, you start snapping like Anderson Cooper does. I've never seen Anderson Cooper snap like that. Chris Sununu is owning that argument. He's sitting there and he's saying, guys, $59 million in air quotes FEMA funding that is going to put illegal immigrants in hotels in New York City. The American people are not on board with that. If you want to defend that, and Cooper's like, I'm not defending it. If you want to defend that, be my guest. If you want to try to find excuses for that, be my guest. And Cooper's like, I was on the ground in Katrina. Okay, yeah, there are technically some good things that these operations and organizations do. It doesn't mean that they are efficiently run. It doesn't mean that there's not a ton of fat that could be cut out of these operations and nobody would bat an eye. That's the broader point here. Coming up, the 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We'll get to next on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
6:50 on a snowy, windy Wednesday morning across Kansas City. It's that time of the day. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio.
Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Let's get right to it.
Number 1.
All right, top story this morning is the weather in Kansas City. We've got, as you heard from Greg Bennett, 3 to 5 inches expected. Could be 6 inches in some areas around the metro. The wind is blowing at about 25 miles an hour. It's a powdery snow, so you will see that snow kicking up and kicking around throughout the day. If you have to be on the roads, take your time, be careful. There's not a sheet of ice underneath, which is a good thing, but you still are going to want to give yourself plenty of time this morning. Most schools, obviously, are closed today around Kansas City, either virtual learning or just canceled for the day. So, no reason to hopefully go out, at least not with the kids, unless you're going maybe sleigh riding or something like that. You going to take the girls out later today, Mark? What do you say?
Depending on the wind chills, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It is cold out there. It's 20 degrees right now, so make sure that you give yourself some time. You heard from Brian Platt, the Kansas City city manager, last segment. He noted that they've got salt on the roads. It's more expensive, but it's better in these colder temperatures, and we need it right now, with it being 20 degrees, give or take, around the entire Kansas City metro. So we'll have you covered on the weather all morning long. Nathan Brennan, KCTV5 reporter, will be back next hour to give us an update on the roads. Story number 2, Mark Fogel returned home last night to the United States after being in prison in Russia for nearly 4 years. He was busted with about half an ounce of medical marijuana back in 2021 in Russia. In June of 22, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released yesterday, and he had an incredible moment at the White House last night with President Trump. He's a school teacher from Pennsylvania. He's a regular guy. And seeing Donald Trump greet him at the White House last night at about 9:30 Central Time, and then doing a little, gaggle with the media, was an incredibly powerful moment with the American flag draped around his shoulders. If you haven't seen the story, if you haven't maybe watched or missed some of that press conference, we will play some of that for you this morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. But it was a very powerful moment. And just a reminder on some of the great things happening every single day. 23 days into this administration, here was Mark Fogel last night.
I feel like the luckiest man on earth right now. And I want you to know that I am not a hero in this at all. And President Trump is a hero. These men that came from the diplomatic service are heroes. The senators and representatives that passed legislation in my honor to get me home are the heroes.
That was Mark Fogel from the White House last night after returning from a Russian prison yesterday after nearly 3 years following his medical marijuana incident in Russia back in 2021. Meantime, as we continue with the 6 at 6 here on KCMO.
Number 3.
Story number 3 this morning is the inflation numbers will be coming out at 7:30 today. This is the January Consumer Price Index number. The estimates are for a 12-month inflation rate of 2.9%. That is still well above the Fed target of 2%. Now, I'm sure what's going to happen is the numbers will come in a little hot, and people will say, what's Trump doing about the price of eggs? 23 days into him being in the White House. I guarantee you that will be a major talking point today. We have been dealing with inflation for the better part of 4 years. It will not be knocked down overnight. It's not. It's still too hot. There are reasons for that, but there's a lot happening, and we'll talk more about that next hour with some of the audio that Elon Musk was airing yesterday and talking about in the White House. So more to come on that front. Continuing the 6 at 6.
Number 4.
The Lawrence Police Department is expanding its investigation of a school therapist who has been accused of sexually assaulting children with potentially more than 2 victims. Lawrence police announced the arrest of 60-year-old Mark Gridley yesterday, and originally there were 2 victims in the elementary school that he worked at, Prairie Park. But now the department is saying that they are expanding that investigation to potentially include more than the 2 kids that were originally part of this investigation. So this is a disturbing story. He made his first appearance in court this week. He's being held on a $1.5 million bond. He right now is being charged with aggravated indecent liberties with a child under the age of 14, and he is also being charged with kidnapping. He's scheduled back in court on February 19th. Police are asking families who have concerns about interactions between their children and Gridley to call police before discussing it with their kids. And the hotline for parents is 785-830-7430. We'll continue on KCMO.
Number 5.
Ned Yost coming back to the Royals. How about that? Woo! Welcome back to Kansas City Royals former manager who won a World Series here, of course, Ned Yost. He's back in the mix. He is returning in a new role as a senior advisor to general manager J.J. Piccolo. So he was the manager for the Royals from 2010 to 2019. Of course, they won the pennant in 2014, lost the World Series, and then won the whole deal in 2015.
So this is like what Dayton Moore is to the Rangers.
Yes, senior advisor. That's correct. Well done there, Mark. And we'll wrap it up with the 6 at 6.
Number 6.
Keep it on the sports front. Kansas State playing some of the best basketball in the country. They started off 1-6 in Big 12 play. They have now won 6 in a row. 4 of those wins over ranked teams, including last night's 73-70 win over number 13 Arizona. Doug McDaniel scored a season-high 24 points, and suddenly Kansas State is potentially looking at an NCAA tournament appearance, which looked like a complete impossibility just a few weeks ago. This team has come together, and it's been darn impressive to watch. There's your 6 at 6 on KCMO. A local congressman is going hard in on the president. We'll tell you who and why next. Kansas City Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver has woken from his multi-year slumber, it seems. He's got a little pep in his step. The former Kansas City mayor and now congressman for Missouri's 5th Congressional District. I'll tell you why, and why I'm also not buying it, coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio. The snow is falling. The roads, take your time this morning, seeing slower traffic than usual, as you would imagine. Just after 7 o'clock, people are either staying home. If you're out there, definitely give yourself some time today, as we still have a couple inches of snow to come. I'd say there's 2 or 3 inches on the ground right now, and we'll about double that number in the next few hours. The snow will be done by mid-afternoon at the latest. That is what is keeping these snowfall totals below what was originally anticipated, where the expectations were 6 to 10 inches. We're now looking at about 5 to 6 inches of snow, and it's much easier to take that than it is the 10 inches. So it's definitely something to celebrate this morning if you're looking for a small win today on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Emmanuel Cleaver has been very busy on X the last 48 hours. He posted yesterday afternoon, quote, "It is deeply disturbing that President Trump, Vice President Vance, and members of the Trump administration are openly advocating for the flouting of federal court rulings." He says the American people want lower prices, not a constitutional crisis. Now, I may have missed the post on X by Emmanuel Cleaver. I may have missed it when Joe Biden said about student loan debt, "The Supreme Court tried to block me, but they didn't stop me." Do you remember that? I know you do. Do you remember Emmanuel Cleaver being outraged by that? No. Oh, I don't either, but I'm here for you at 913-408-7957 if you have a memory of Emmanuel Cleaver saying something like that. And that was the Supreme Court. That was not some two-bit political huckster judge in a deep blue district who was appointed by Obama or Biden just doing the bidding of his own political party. That was the Supreme Court. So you see what's happening here when it comes to the spending, trying to rein it in, and the way that Democrats are now trying to use the court system in their favor. They're going to favorable judges, and they're basically saying, do us a solid. That's the name of the game. And they're using these unelected judges, just like they talk about Elon Musk. Oh, Elon Musk is unelected. They're using unelected judges to try to stop the duly elected president from trying to find waste and fraud and abuse across the federal government. Ask yourself why that would be and why Emmanuel Cleaver would suddenly be so outraged by this. We haven't heard from Emmanuel. Emmanuel Cleaver wasn't all that loud during the Trump's first administration. Now, all of a sudden, he's very active on social media, and he's even getting in the mix at rallies like this one 2 days ago where he was with Maxine Waters. Take a listen to Emmanuel Cleaver.
One of the greatest joys of my time here in Congress was to work with Maxine Waters, Elizabeth Warren, and Barney Frank to create the CFPB. Now, I'm going to be quick because I want to send a message to somebody. Elon. Take your musty millions and musty Moscow rights to the moon.
Take what?
Because if you don't, we're going to stand up, we're going to speak out, we're going to march, we're going to do anything we need to do to make sure that the people of this country understand that the CFPB is for them. You get your musty hands off of our money.
Is there something about Elon Musk we have to know? Why is he musty? Where does the Elon Musk insult of him being musty come from? Does he have stale, moldy, or damp-smelling hands? Get your musty hands off of my Consumer Protection Bureau agency. The CFPB is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that Emmanuel Cleaver was protesting outside of a couple of days ago. Where does the musty insult come from with Emmanuel Cleaver? That didn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't make any sense to me on the second day I played it now on KCMO. I don't understand it. Emmanuel Cleaver also put up on X yesterday the following post. Elon Musk and President Trump claim they're gutting federal programs to eliminate waste and fraud. In reality, they're kneecapping universities, hospitals, and nonprofits in our communities that play a critical role in finding new treatments and cures for diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. Oh, please. I mean,
he's a nut job.
Yeah, we were right on the verge of curing cancer until Trump and Elon decided to find wasteful spending in the budget. We were this close, folks, right? We were right on the edge of curing cancer. And then Elon and Trump came in and blew up the whole thing. I mean, even Biden's like, come on, man. Please. You're buying that from Emmanuel Cleaver? My goodness. It's like, what are we trying to hide here? That's the question I keep coming back to. No one's heard from Cleaver in years. He doesn't do any local media. You barely hear from the guy. He's got a cushy job, but he's not doing a whole lot these days. And now he's outraged by Elon Musk. Why might that be? What is the incentive there on Emmanuel Cleaver's side of things to suddenly awaken from his slumber, his multi-year slumber, to start trashing this investigation by the president of the United States? Now, he's appointed somebody to handle it, but the duly elected president of the United States to suddenly come out and attack the guy. Why would the Kansas City congressman go about it that way? Ask yourself that question. 913-408-7957. Jonathan's in Kansas City on KCMO. Go ahead, my friend.
Hey, Pete. I don't know if you remember this, but like years and years ago, former Mayor Cleaver and Representative Cleaver, I think he spent millions of dollars on this private car wash. And a bunch of taxpayer money, a bunch of taxpayer money went to it, and it was a huge fraud, and it lost tons of money. You know, I guess in light of that and his background, maybe we shouldn't be so surprised that he's standing up for not doing anything about waste in the government. I mean, it sounds like he might have benefited from it. It sounds like a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I genuinely don't know, but it's a very good call.
A man and a woman.
In the words of Emmanuel Cleaver. That goes back 10 years. Bank of America settling its year-long legal dispute with Emmanuel Cleaver over a loan he obtained more than a decade ago to buy a car wash. But the settlement, announced just moments before the dispute was set to go to trial, still leaves Cleaver, his wife, and Cleaver Co. LLC on the hook for more than $1.2 million in future payments to the bank. In a statement, the Kansas City Democrats said the troubled car wash was recently sold and the proceeds were used to pay off part of the original loan, but he said he and his wife will still face payments on the debt, perhaps for years to come. Well, a $1.2 million loan on a congressman making about $200,000, that's a big nut, right? That's a big old chunk of change. And that settlement was 10 years ago. Makes you wonder. The faux outrage around this is something to watch. The people screaming the loudest are the ones that are worth watching here. Coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio, we are going to go back out onto the roads and hear from Nathan Brennan, KCTV5. He has been driving all over Kansas City. He'll tell us what he is seeing coming up. And then the latest inflation numbers for January drop at 7:30. So it's a busy hour on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Well, if you got to be out on the roads this morning, Nathan Brennan, KCTV5 reporter, has been driving all over Kansas City for the last couple of hours. He is here on 95.7 FM. Nathan, good morning. Where have you been so far today, my friend?
Well, Pete, you actually caught me at the perfect time because we are on I-35 southbound. We just passed by Power and Light downtown area. And right now, I will tell you that if you're driving on I-35 northbound or southbound, you will not be able to see any pavement. There are no lanes of traffic. Right now, we're basically just trying to find those grooves of where other drivers have driven over earlier this morning. So definitely a heads up to drivers. We're not slipping and sliding nearly as much as we were last month for that historic storm. But I tell you what, it is still a little bit slippery. Make sure you're taking it slow. I think we're going about 30 miles an hour right now on I-35 southbound. So just a heads up if you're starting your morning commute. And I just said this in the last half hour or so on Channel 5. Go ahead and tell your boss that I told you it's okay to take the day off or maybe work from home because we haven't seen too many cars out on the roadways, and that's probably a good thing.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if there was ever a push and a pitch to a boss, I think Nathan Brennan at KCTV5 is as authoritative a figure as you're going to get in this community that's going to make the boss say, you know what, stay home today. It's just fine. But that's good advice because you've been all over the metro since, what, about 4 o'clock this morning?
Yeah, we got out and about at about 4 o'clock this morning. I actually headed into work around 3 o'clock this morning, and we didn't really see any conditions at all because the snow didn't really pick up until about 4 o'clock. That's when we started to see the roads be a little bit more packed with snow. And really in the past hour and a half or so is when we really started to see a little bit of these sloppier conditions because of that packed snow. So if you headed out earlier this morning, maybe you're an early bird like myself or yourself, Pete, you probably didn't notice those bad road conditions quite yet. But if you head out maybe during your lunch hour or even later tonight, you're going to see some of those sloppier conditions.
All right. Brian Platt, the Kansas City, Missouri city manager, told us last hour that they've already got snow plows. They've got blades on the streets. Can you confirm or deny that?
Yeah, I can definitely confirm that. We've seen snow plows out on the roads. I know that they have quite a bit, thousands and thousands of miles that they got to cover throughout Kansas City. I know that the interstates and highways are their first priority. Right now, I will say I-35 southbound. We're getting off here at 7th Street Trafficway on Rainbow Boulevard. These roads have certainly not been plowed recently. Now, again, they've got a lot of road, a lot of interstate to cover. I know they're working closely with MoDOT as well for a lot of this, but these roads certainly haven't been plowed, and it's really going to be hit or miss, especially as the snow continues to fall.
Any notable difference on the Kansas side versus the Missouri side in the early morning hours?
No, I wouldn't really say so. I know that last go around there was definitely a difference when you cross state lines. So far, we haven't seen that. Actually, right now we're seeing the car's wheels are spinning a little bit here on one of these off ramps off of I-35. So the on and off ramps, I will give a heads up too for drivers. You might be slipping and sliding a little bit more because of that ice that's underneath the packed snow. But crossing state lines, not seeing too much of a difference right now. Again, as the snow continues to fall, it's tough to keep up with these conditions, so it's going to be really hit or miss as you start your morning commute. Which roads have recently been paved and which ones haven't?
All right, good to note. Good to note. Nathan Brennan, KCTV5, working hard out on the streets around Kansas City, and you trust that driver you got sitting next to you there? Is he good?
We'll find out, right? We'll see if you hear from me later on this morning, but let's hope so.
Yeah. All right, Nathan, keep up the good work. Thanks for joining us, and we'd love to connect throughout the morning here on KCMO.
All right, Pete. Appreciate you as always.
All right, Nathan Brennan, KCTV5, doing outstanding work, and we appreciate him hopping on. He's been the guy out on the streets. Remember, it used to be Bill Hurlbrink, Big Bad Bill Hurlbrink. We gave him that nickname when he was grinding on the roads around Kansas City, and then he got the big cushy job in the anchor's desk in the mornings, and now it's Nathan Brennan hitting the streets.
Bill moved his way up.
Bill worked his way up the food chain very quickly there at KCTV5. He's now warm and cozy in his studio. Now, as are we. I'm not saying he shouldn't be, but I remember when he was Big Bad Bill Hurlbrink working the roads, and now it's Nathan Brennan doing very good work on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Before we get to the inflation number, did you see Elon Musk changed his Twitter handle or his X handle yesterday?
I saw it.
To Harry Bolz.
Bowles.
Harry Bowles.
Yeah.
So Elon's Twitter handle and name now reads Harry Bowles, Bolz. And I guess CNN is like all about reporting this very seriously. Here's Dana Bash yesterday on CNN.
Now, the disruptor in chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge.
Well,
she pronounced that very differently than we did.
I know. It's like, once again, CNN can't get it right.
Fake news.
It's Harry Bowles, B-O-L-Z. I don't know why she's pronouncing it differently. But Harry Bowles is now Elon Musk's alias on X. But for CNN,
Harry Balls,
I guess they decided to go a different route. The inflation report drops in 90 seconds. We'll react to it next.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Bad inflation number just dropping here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. January's consumer price index, inflation rising to 3% year over year. The expectations were for 2.9%. The core CPI inflation, which is basically excluding food and energy prices, rising to 3.3%. The expectations there were for 3.1%. So CPI inflation up 4 straight months. Core CPI officially back on the rise again. Inflation in the United States is hot. The month-over-month number, 0.5%. The estimates were for 0.3%. So this is not good. Now, you sit here, and I guarantee you some of the headlines are going to start to point the finger politically on a Wednesday morning. The Dow futures are off 400 points right now. Now, why would the markets react negatively? Well, the markets are always looking for some news that would suggest inflation's cooling down. Maybe we get some kind of rate cut down the road. That ain't happening, and nor should it happen. I said the last several months under Joe Biden, you can't possibly cut rates in this environment. And even though Trump has suggested or implied we want to cut rates, you can't cut rates right now. Trump can't cut rates right now. Now, you get to a place where you get this federal deficit cut in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion a year. You try to get spending under control. You will help calm down inflation. That's the broader point that's being missed in what Doge is doing. Right now, we are printing money that we don't have, and we're using that printed money to devalue the dollar, and we're chasing goods and services artificially with money that we technically don't have. That's what's going on. So every single day that we print money that does not exist, you're devaluing the dollar. It's like anything else. If you create more of something, the value of that something goes down. And that's what we're seeing happen every single day. It's why this obscene, and I would argue criminal, government spending that has gone on for the last couple of years, several years in particular, has got to come to an end since COVID, really. Because all that's going on is it's benefiting people in the public sector. It's benefiting the government. It's benefiting government workers. And the guy and gal on Main Street's getting royally screwed by all this. So you sit here right now and you say, okay, what's the biggest driver of this? It's not eggs, okay? Because core CPI, which excludes food and energy, was even higher than the regular inflation number. If anyone's going to tell you that the inflation number was driven by eggs, they don't know what they're talking about. Now, we want eggs to get back under control, but that's largely driven by something you can't blame Trump or Biden for. This bird flu that broke out around the country that resulted in 100 million chickens having to be killed. I mean, I know, Trump's White House press secretary was like, oh, yeah, this is all because Biden killed 100 million chickens. Well, I mean, they had the bird flu, okay? I mean, it's terrible, but not everything is political. But what happens? It's common sense, supply and demand, economics 101. You decrease the supply of chickens, you decrease the supply of eggs. If demand holds where it is, then the price of those eggs are going to go up. That's what we've seen happen. But inflation is not above expectations right now because of eggs. It's not. It's just because the economy still has too many dollars chasing too few goods and services. And it's going to take time for this administration to get that under control. So the inflation number coming in at 3% above the expectations of 2.9%. And the core CPI, which is inflation excluding food and energy, comes in at 3.3% year over year, above the expectations of 3.1%. And to put this in perspective, the Fed wants 2% inflation. We have not had 2% annual inflation in going on 4 years now. That's how long it's been since we've been around that 2% goal. And it peaked at 10% in 2022 after the obscene levels of government spending during COVID and then through the first year of President Biden. Now, Elon was at the White House yesterday, and he talked about this very issue. And I don't see how what Elon Musk says here in this clip I'm about to play is some kind of constitutional crisis, is somehow something that is highly political. If you're just a regular person, I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump or you voted for Kamala Harris. Listen to what Elon Musk says here. It's about a minute clip. And tell me what is so offensive and why this is such a bad idea. Here we go.
What are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. And then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you can cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. Imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same.
That was Elon Musk yesterday at the White House. While Kansas City Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver is screaming about, Elon Musk basically keeping his musty hands, as he said it, off of their money. No, it's our money, by the way. And off of their big bloated bureaucracies. Elon's making a salient case in the White House for why going through the budget and trying to reduce the federal deficit from $2 trillion a year to $1 trillion a year, and then trying to deregulate to grow your way out of the other $1 trillion a year can create a world where, first off, you're balancing a budget, and then secondarily, you're knocking down inflation. And you're knocking down interest rates in the process because right now the government's basically borrowing against itself is what's happening. And the more money they're printing that's chasing all these different goods and services and who knows what else, it's hurting the average person who isn't benefiting, largely speaking, from the printed money that is just being distributed to God knows where. That's what's playing out in real time right now. So the inflation number's not good. The S&P dropping 1% in the pre-trading hour here. Looks like it's going to open off about 1%, looking at those numbers right now, because this was the month-over-month number was the largest over the past year of 0.5%. And annually, it was the highest number since June of 2024. So this is the January number, which once again, the bulk of that, let's just be honest too. Trump gets inaugurated on what, January 20th? So this is, no matter what anyone tells you, this is still the last month for Joe Biden being in office. 2/3 of it is. And if you think Trump's going to lower inflation in 10 days, sorry, that's not going to happen. But I think we're in for a cycle here. It could be a couple of months of this. It's not going to get knocked down over time, just like it's not going to spike over time. Remember, in 2021, we started to see signs of inflation. And what did people say? It's transitory. Remember that line? This inflation, it's just transitory. We'll be back down to 2% in no time. And then with each passing month, it got higher and higher and higher and higher. to the point where by summer of 22, you're sitting there with 40-year highs on inflation saying, what the heck's going on here? This is absurd. So let's remember, this will take time to get it back to where you want to be, and it's not going to happen overnight. And no one expected it to happen overnight. But any idea that Trump's going to get rates down right now, you can't lower rates. That's the one thing I'll say. Trump cannot be talking about lower rates until there is evidence that government spending being cut combined with economic growth is leading us to a place where the Fed can consider cutting interest rates. But I don't see it happening, nor should it happen anytime soon. 913-408-7957. More cars out on the roads as I look out on 435. Take your time. Be careful. That snow is packed in. It's pretty powdery, but it is packed in on your major roads and interstates. So give yourself plenty of time this morning. 913-408-7957 as we roll right up until 8 o'clock. Our buddy Luke Doris, KCTV5 chief meteorologist, will give us the latest on this storm next hour on 95.7 FM KCMO.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
We got some breaking news here this morning at 7:50, a snowy one across Kansas City, although the snow looks like it's not coming down nearly as fast as it was at about 4 o'clock this morning. So that's a good sign when it comes to what the rest of the day may hold. But Travis Kelce has addressed his future with the Kansas City Chiefs. Talked about it this morning on his New Heights podcast that just dropped. Of course, that's the show with his brother Jason. And Mark, why don't you read to us what Travis Kelce had to say about what his future holds?
All right. He said, I'm just kicking everything down the road, kicking the can down the road. I'm not making any crazy decisions. The biggest thing is just being there for my teammates, being there for my coaches, understanding there's a lot that goes into this thing. I've been fortunate over the past 5 to 6 years, played more football than anybody. It's because of that, the people in that building, the fact that we keep going to these AFC championships and Super Bowls means that I've been playing an extra 3 games than everybody else in the league. That's a lot of wear and tear on your body. And it's a lot of time spent in that building working on your craft, working on the task at hand. The process can be grueling. I'm going to take some time to figure it out. I owe that to my teammates. And if I do come back, it's going to be something that's wholehearted decision, not a half-assed thing. I'm fully here for them, and I think I could play. It's just whether or not I'm motivated, if it's the best decision for me as a man, a human, and a person to take on all that responsibility.
I think he's done.
Really?
The minute you start thinking about retirement, the minute you're thinking about one foot being out the door, I predict he's going to retire.
Really?
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Now, he's right to note, think about it. They play an extra at least 2, but oftentimes 3 games. I mean, last year it was 4 games. This year it was 3 games. The year before that it was 3 games. So he's probably played an extra season of football the last 5 or 6 years, right? And he's 35 years old. I mean, in the NFL, that's an old man. He'll be 36 in October. I get the sense he's done. I mean, listen, he didn't have a great year, and it's not a knock on him. He's still great in big spots. He was really good against the Houston Texans in that first-round playoff game, or second-round technically, divisional round playoff game, when basically the Texans left the middle of the field open, and Kelce can still catch with the best of them. He still has a very unique relationship with Mahomes where they kind of read each other's minds on where to be and when to go off script and things like that. You can practice it, but there's something innate about the relationship between those two. But the fact that he didn't say, I'm pretty confident I'll be back, or I want to be back, my plan is to be back. He talked like a guy who's ready to retire. Don't you think, Mark? Sounds like you don't agree with that, though, or you don't want to agree.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and listen to the whole podcast later today to kind of get a feel for it.
See, here's the thing. I agree. Sometimes it matters what you sound like when you say something. But in this case, I think it's more valuable to see the words that are said.
Mm-hmm.
And he sounds like a guy that's done.
And he's disappointed, too, still. It's a couple days after the loss.
Well, that's true.
So I think maybe in a couple weeks he might have a different
Hold on. If the loss was that bothersome to him, right, where he's like, I'm not going out like that. The last you see of me is not going to be getting blown out in a Super Bowl. He would have taken the opposite approach. He didn't say that. He sounded like a guy who's worn out.
Tired, yeah.
He's tired just based on those words. Like, clearly, he knew that was going to be the biggest news item to come out of this podcast. He didn't just wing it when he cracked the mic.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. And he could have come out, ball of fire, saying, man, I wasn't sure, but I'm not going out like that. That's not the last you saw of me. We got to give this thing another shot. The minute you start thinking about doing something else in any profession is the minute you've mentally checked out, you're done, and you're not going to be at the top of your game. And I'm not knocking him for that at all. He's had an all-time Hall of Fame career. He may be the best tight end to ever do it. I'm not saying this is the wrong decision for him. I'm just telling you, that's what I hear from Travis Kelce when you read that quote to me.
And his brother went through the similar thing 2 years ago, and then he ended up coming back for one more season.
He did.
So, I mean, we'll see. He still has one more year on his deal, so.
And, well, here's the other thing, too. he's got a major cap hit. $19.8 million cap hit, which would be the highest cap hit for the salary cap for a tight end in the entire league. Can you justify that if you're Brett Veach and you're trying to build a team under the salary cap restrictions that you have? Mahomes is a $66 million cap hit. Jones is 35. Jawan freaking Taylor's a $27 million cap hit. Oh, there's another flag on Jawan Taylor at right tackle.
Yeah, next year, here's the last year here.
Joe Tooney, $27 million cap hit. Travis Kelce, $20 million cap hit. That's 5 players, and 63% of the cap space is on 5 players. It's $175 million. There's going to be tough decisions that have to be made this offseason for this team. And I think the money is going to factor in as well. Kelsey's sitting on a $100 million podcast deal that he's got waiting for him. And who knows what else in Hollywood. And then the question is, what happens with Taylor? Is he finally going to get down on one knee? Bro, it's been 2 years. Poop or get off the pot. It's time. You're a big boy now. You're going to be 36. It's time to know what you want.
Taylor could also be the motivating factor to do one more year. She could be like, hey, you can only do this one time in your life. You know, I can only tour for so long in my life, so you got to do it while you can, because once you're done, you can't go back.
It's very true, Mark. It's very true. All right. Well, this is worth watching. I didn't think he would say that, to be honest. I thought he would hem and haw a little bit more than he did in that quote you just read to me, which tells me that there may be some serious decisions that have to be made for Travis Kelce.
A farewell tour with Taylor around the NFL would be kind of fun, though. Because everybody will know next year is his last year.
No one wants a farewell. Athletes doing farewell tours are so corny.
It's true. But it would be fun for us in the Chiefs Kingdom. Everybody would hate it, but we would love it.
Yeah, and I don't want more hatred coming this way. All right, don't do the farewell tour, please. Mark, that's a terrible idea. Please don't propose that again. All right, we got Luke Doris next hour, the latest on the weather, and much more on KCMO. 8:05, good morning. Glad you're here on a snowy Wednesday across Kansas City on KCMO Talk Radio. The snow is slowing down, at least down here at Corporate Woods. It may pick up once again in a couple of hours, but we will hear from Luke Doris, KCTV5 meteorologist. The chief meteorologist is going to be joining us in just about 10 minutes or so. So get the latest from him. You'll hear that first right here on 95.7 FM. KCMO Talk Radio. In the meantime, the inflation numbers came out last hour, hotter than expected, at 3.1% on the inflation year over year, 3.3% core CPI. So that means the inflation was higher when you exclude energy and food prices. So if anyone's going to tell you this is all about eggs, they're wrong. I saw that report from Forbes. They're like, eggs up 15% as inflation hits 3.1%. The core CPI being higher than the CPI when the core CPI doesn't include food, i.e. eggs, tells you that it's just right now still across the board, across the entire economy, where things feel a little hot, or they remain a little hot. There's no rate cut coming. That's why you're seeing the Dow futures down a couple hundred to a few hundred points. As the markets get set to open up in 24 minutes, we'll update you on that here on KCMO 95.7 FM. Now, in the meantime, Elon Musk is the boogeyman. And I got confirmation on this last night when I got an email from my representative, Sharice Davids, here on the Kansas side of the state line. You may have gotten this as well if you're a constituent. But Sharice Davids sent her constituents an email, and it was all about Elon. The subject of the email read, Urgent, Elon Musk and the budget survey. And I looked and read the entire email from Sharice Davids. Trump's name never showed up. It was all about Elon, which is very telling to me. Clearly, they believe that their best plan of attack is to go after Elon Musk versus going after Donald Trump. Suddenly, the orange man bad is not their best line of attack. Trump's name is not in this email, even as like Donald Trump supporting unelected billionaire Elon Musk. I looked through the whole email. Trump's name doesn't appear. It's all about Elon. So Sharice Davids sends this email out, and she asks this question in the email. And she wants you to take a survey. The question is, how do you think the United States government should address the nation's budget? Well, first off, I laugh at the question because Sharice Davids has been in Congress for going on 7 years now. And you tell me, you people can't balance a budget to save your lives. And now all of a sudden it's like, how should America balance the budget? The fact that Elon even has you talking about balancing the budget, Sharice Davids, is a win for the American people. Because at no point have I heard Sharice Davids talk in any kind of meaningful way about the importance of balancing the budget and getting our spending under control. Have you? I may have missed a town hall here or there. I may have missed one of the voicemails that she leaves me quarterly. But at no point has she taken a serious approach. And frankly, this is not just her. This is Democrats and Republicans who have not cared about balancing the budget or spending in this country for decades now. And Republicans, yes, are cheering this on, and good for them, but I'm not excusing them either. Because Republicans in Congress love to care about spending when they're not in power, and then when they do, they act like a horse's rear end. So I don't want to hear from the Republicans right now. That's why I like the idea of Trump appointing somebody like Elon Musk, who has done more in a week and a half to 2 weeks to uncover some of the absurd spending in this country than Republicans have done in 1.5 to 2 decades. So the Republicans will go rah-rah in Congress, but frankly, I don't want to hear from them right now. I'm not interested in hearing from the Republicans right now. They are doing nothing, and they haven't done anything for the American people for far too long on this front, so I'm not interested. But Sharice Davids certainly has had no interest on the issue. But now that Elon is bringing it to the forefront, well, she's pretending or maybe genuinely caring. I don't know. But here are the options from Sharice Davids on this question in her email that reads, how do you think the United States government should address the nation's budget? The three options are as follows in this email. Bipartisan compromise by the people's representatives in the House and the Senate. Entrusting Elon Musk is option number 2. And the third option is other/I don't know. Well, if that's not a leading question looking for a very clear answer, I don't know what is. Obviously, the answer that Sharice Davids is looking for is, of course, we want bipartisan compromise by the people's representatives in the House and the Senate. Where have you been doing that for the last few years? It's been a Republican House with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic White House. Where's that bipartisan compromise to balance the budget and cut spending, which is at historic highs where we're running $2 trillion deficits every single year? You guys had a chance to do that. And now Trump is saying, hey, I'm appointing one of the smartest guys in the world, all right, who is maybe the Einstein of our generation, who has built up incredible companies like Tesla and SpaceX, and he totally revamped formerly Twitter, now X. I'm going to put him on it. I'm the duly elected president, and this guy wants to help us figure out the waste and the fraud and the abuse of the American people's tax dollars, and by golly, he's going to do it. And suddenly that is very offensive to Emmanuel Cleaver in Missouri and Sharice Davids here in Kansas. And Sharice Davids in this email goes on to refer to Elon Musk multiple times as an unelected billionaire. They're showing their hand here in all this is what they're doing. Okay? They're showing their hand. They're claiming that Elon Musk is doing this to try to fleece the American taxpayer and make more money. Elon Musk is worth $400 billion, you imbeciles. Okay? You really think Elon Musk needs the federal government to make money? I mean, yes, the federal government has had these electric vehicle mandates, and they've had these EV tax credits, which have theoretically helped Tesla. But here's the thing. Elon Musk is so smart, he doesn't need the government to become the richest man in the world. You clowns do. How many people in Congress with $200,000 salaries are worth tens of millions of dollars? Too many to count. They're showing their hand. They're proving to us what they allegedly might be by claiming it's Elon. He's the one. He just wants to become a super duper billionaire, maybe a trillionaire. No. See, here's the thing. He doesn't need the government to become a billionaire. He doesn't need the government to become rich because he actually has talents and skills and smarts, unlike most of you. 913-408-7957. Rick in Leavenworth, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yes. Hey, thank you. So I don't want, so first of all, I'm a conservative and I voted for Trump. I want a real budget. I don't want a CR. I want Congress to do their job, and I want there to be the balance of power. Now, I'm okay with what Elon Musk is doing, but I'm wary of it because he isn't elected, and I want him to have access to everything, root it out, write it all down, give it to the president to give to Congress to do it the right way, because there is a constitutional way here, and to then implement all those recommendations, whether it be get rid of this, place or tax this money. That's what I want, because he just can't do it unilaterally. I love the president. He's doing the right things, but there is a process here. We have a balance of power. Like I said, I am a constitutionalist and I want it done right, but I voted for these people to find this stuff and I want them to.
Yeah.
But let's do it right. Otherwise, it's going to be undone.
Absolutely. Listen, I totally agree. Whatever can be done through the office of the presidency. Thank you, Rick. I want done through the presidency. But yes, in the end, I also want Congress to do its job, the House to do its job, and make some broader cuts that then are enacted through congressional approval. I think both those things can happen and should happen at the same time. I am totally with you there. But there are certain things that, listen, the president does have the right to do to shrink government. And frankly, I don't want to wait for Congress, Republicans or Democrats, because they all waste our time. Go ahead, Paul, in Kansas City. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete, a couple of points. You're exactly right. CNN just did a whole block attacking Musk, and that's going to be their attack as they move forward. Secondly, Congress has the power of the purse, right? Well, they've done nothing. What Musk and his team have done is gone in line item by line item in budgets and appropriations and done stuff in like 3 weeks that Congress hadn't done in 50 years. So don't tell me about this power of the purse. You guys have done nothing, Sharice Davis or Emmanuel Cleaver. And secondly, once they get done with this, they need to make sure that it goes through the congressional and they act on what Musk is finding, because he's finding grift, he's finding corruption, and he's finding fraud. When you send an invoice out from Treasury and you got no code and you got no justification, that's ridiculous. Nobody does that. So, one other point, talking about Musk getting information on private citizens. I worked for the government at Fort Leavenworth, and my SF-86, which is the Forum for Security Information, which has got everything on you, was hacked by the Chinese. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of government employees got their information hacked. And all the OPM IT director said to Congress, well, that's the way it goes. So don't tell me about private information. I don't want to hear it.
Thank you, Paul. Let's go to Dan in Overland Park. Go ahead, Dan. You got a minute. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, I support what Trump and Elon are doing, but if Elon and Trump weren't doing what I wanted done, I would be mad as all get out about this, because there is a huge potential for conflict of interest given Musk's numerous government contracts and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listen, that is where you're right. And that is where Congress has to also be a part of the equation here. I totally agree with you. But the fact that we're having this conversation, Dan, about the levels of waste and alleged fraud that is out there across the federal government is the first step, right? It's like when you've got a problem, and I don't care what that problem is, God forbid, drinking, drugs, pornography. The first thing you have to do is admit you've got one. And you got to have clear examples of what those problems are. And I feel like we're in that phase of this right now. And then Trump knows what he can and can't do, what he can and can't cut, trying to buy people out of contracts. And then ultimately, yes, Congress is going to play a role in this. But the president also has a right to evaluate and look at some of the spending that's out there and determine whether or not there's something he can do about it. Steve in Kansas City, real quick, you're on KCMO. Go ahead. Great call, Steve. Excellent point. Thanks so much for making it. That's great. Woo! Outstanding. Well done. Well, we had to get to our buddy Luke Doris anyway, KCTV5 chief meteorologist. He is going to be here, give us the latest on what's happening with the snow this morning, when it will officially be done, what our totals are. Luke Doris is coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. Meantime, are you thinking about a new tub or shower? If so, there is only one name to know in Kansas City, The Plumbing Pro. For over 40 years, The Plumbing Pro has been the new bath pro. May have seen all the national personalities promoting tub and shower replacements. Well, The Plumbing Pro is your local Kansas City alternative. And right now, with Pete's deal, get $2,000 off and 12 months same as cash with approved credit. Save money and time. Steve and his team are easy to work with, low stress, and yes, a free consultation. The Plumbing Pro, right here in Kansas City, Pete's deal, $2,000 off and 12 months same as cash. The website is theplumbingpro.com. That's theplumbingpro.com, or call 816-763-8200.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Well, we are looking outside corporate woods here on KCMO 95.7 FM, and the snowfall has definitely slowed down. But what does that mean for the rest of the morning? Let's say hello and good morning to our good friend Luke Doris. He is the KCTV5 chief meteorologist on KCMO. Luke, what have we had so far, and what are we looking at the rest of the morning here?
Pete, good morning. All right, so what have we had so far? Whenever we have an event like this, it's agonizing how slow the snow reports come in. So if you're listening to this and you ever want to help with that, that's why we love snow reports, because from the airport, which is our official, that's where we get our official readings, they only do that about four times a day. So we've got to wait on those. But so far, it's ranging anywhere from about 1.5 inches to 3 inches is what we've seen in the general area. And then for the rest of the morning, it's kind of like this. The heaviest snow's done. All right, that wrapped up by about 8 o'clock this morning. That band was our main snow accumulator. And it's going to snow through a good chunk of the rest of the day. But it's going to be this real fine, light snow that's going to be on the lighter end. And it's not going to stack up like what we had this morning. So we'll have some snow out there, but it's not going to amount to a whole lot more through the rest of this morning and this afternoon.
So we may get out of this thing with really, 3 to 4 inches for most of the metro, give or take?
Yeah, I think a lot of us are on the low end here. All right, so a couple things happen is one, we talked yesterday about how the snow's ending sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is the period of the heavy snow is shorter too. So like I said, it's going to snow, but it's not going to stack up. And the reason why it won't stack up a whole lot, and this is one of you ever want to pull your hair out, try winter weather forecasting, because not only do we have to, figure out if it's going to snow and then, how much, and we look at these things called snow liquid ratios. It gets real complicated, but one of the most difficult things to do is figure out the type of snowflake that will fall. The different types of snowflakes determine how much it's going to stack up. So if you look outside and you look at the snowflakes, you'll see these really tiny little things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what we call needles. And if you got a ton of needles and you drop them on the ground, they don't stack up that much. They're like these little cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
But if you imagine in your head what's the classic picture of a snowflake, those are what we call dendrites. Those are like kind of cotton balls. And those things really stack up good. These are the needles. So with that kind of snowflake, again, it's just going to stay this fine, powdery, kind of light snow through the rest of the day. And by the time it's all done, we're not going to get a whole lot more. I think we're going to be in the 2 to 3 inch range for a lot of us within Kansas City, and go north, you'll be in more of that 4 to 5 inch range. So this one's on the lower side.
Oh, man, this is just fantastic news from Luke Doris, KCTV5 chief meteorologist. You're right, too. It's kind of like that. I mean, I'm not a big skier, but it's like that great skiing powdery snow, right? Where this is not the stuff that really stacks up, and it also gives you less trouble on the road. So everything about this storm is thankfully, it's basically, it seems like the best case scenario based on where we were 48 hours ago. Is that fair?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we knew we'd get snow because of the size of this thing. The swath of snow is 400 miles wide. So we knew we would get snow. And like you're talking about with, the ski kind of snow, yeah, that's exactly what it is. What's great about that is it's easy to push, it's easy to shovel, and it's just kind of light. And the heavy wet snow that you get is usually, that's going to be real close to your rain line, that transition to a rain line. And that stuff is it's a mess. It's a mess to deal with. So yeah, I mean, the roads are messy. They're all snow covered. But the plows are going to be able to do some damage on this throughout the day, because even though it still snows, it's not, they're doing good work now, and roads will get better as we work our way throughout the day. The evening drive home should be quite a lot better than what we had driving in this morning.
That's great. So what's harder than winter weather predictions or tornado predictions?
Different kind, because tornadoes, we just see the ingredients that they could form, but you never know, where the storms are going to pop that could produce them. So it's just like, in general, be ready for bad weather. Mm-hmm. With winter weather, we have more information to give of, how much it could fall and, tracks and all that kind of stuff. So between the two, the message is more difficult for tornadoes because, like, you could see, we could have tornadoes tomorrow, but where?
But
Well,
where?
somewhere in eastern Kansas or western Missouri. Everybody just be aware. But with snow, we can give you a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. But even then, winter weather is one of the most difficult kinds that there is. There's just so many variables.
Yeah. Well, Luke, you're the man. Thanks for all the work on KCTV5. We'll be watching later today as well to keep up on the storm. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. There you go. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done with our buddy Luke Doris, KCTV5 chief meteorologist on KCMO 95.7 FM. Coming up, are they going to get anything done on one side of our state line, or is it just going to be a lot of hot air? We'll talk to our next guest about that here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And in the meantime, if you missed it from CNN, oh my gosh, what a doozy. That's all in the back half hour.
from the nation's heartland. It's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
All right. Is anything going to happen in Missouri this legislative session? It's just like every single year these conversations take place, these big ideas, big plans, and then the session ends with a whimper. Brenda Talent, president, Show Me Institutes on KCMO. Brenda, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because our new governor, unlike our other one, is actively trying to work on his proposals. Now, let me preface this by saying I don't necessarily agree with all of them. There are some that really excite me, though, like reducing the income tax, educational choice, much more robust educational choice. But others, I mean, you know, we're looking at a budget that's higher than last year. I don't really quite get, if I were a new CEO basically coming into a state, I wouldn't necessarily accept that I have to start with last year's budget and just add to it, which is what we're doing, and we're shuffling money around. You know, there's going to be a big fight over the money for education, which when you look at the numbers, it's sort of, no, we should actually be talking about how we are going to really look at whether we're getting bang for our buck in that area.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because the budget proposal from the governor is like $53 billion, whatever it is. It's $1 billion or $2 higher than last year. And I looked it up going back 10 years. Missouri's budget is double what it was about a decade ago when it was like $27 billion. And I'm sorry, I know inflation's a thing, but that's absurd for the state to double its spending over the last 10 years. So how can you possibly get a 0% income tax when you're blowing out the budget?
It does. The math doesn't work, and I would add, Pete, actually, if you go back just to 2019, which is 6 years ago, we basically have doubled it. I mean, it is ridiculous, and a lot of that was due to federal money, which is drying up, and yet we're continuing to spend as if there's no tomorrow. And you know, it's a simple balancing act. And when my analysts look at what's been happening with Missouri, it seems to us there's a simple answer here. And we talk about the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. We need to put brakes on the growth of government. And we're getting involved in areas we have no business as a government getting involved in. A lot of things are good ideas. That doesn't mean the state government should be funding them.
No, no doubt about it. So, I mean, you guys have some sway, some pull there from folks in Jeff City. Do Republicans in particular understand this novel concept of not spending more while you also try to put more of the people's money back into their pockets? Or is this like, I don't know, a concept that doesn't really connect for people in Jeff City?
You know, it is a conundrum because when you sit down and speak with people, they get it. And then, of course, comes along their favorite project, which they want to fund. And they're like, no, you can't have it both ways. You really, you know, we're competing against other states. And we only have to look to our south, to Tennessee, to see what, you know, our competitors are doing. They're cutting income tax. They have none in Tennessee. They're having a much more robust school choice. They just passed a bill, much more robust than ours, to really recognize what parents want. And by the way, they have, you know, budget, if you will, fiscal responsibility and accountability. I feel like I'm a broken record. It seems to me fairly simple if you're in government to say, you know, we're going to have metrics, we're going to have performance metrics, we're going to see whether you're using the money the way we said we wanted you to use it, and if you're not, you don't get the money. I mean, we haven't done performance audits for our various executive branches or executive departments for years, and certainly you're not hearing that kind of talk about accountability. You know, they have these two committees in the Senate and in the House where citizens, you can go on websites and report what you see as government waste. Well, I want to know, is this just going to generate another report where they don't do anything? Because we've seen these kind of commissions before.
Sounds like we need our Missouri Doge or Elon Musk or something. You got any candidates you can think of there, Brenda Talent?
Well, we've made a proposal from what we call MOJ, Missouri Office of Government Accountability, efficiency rather. although we don't really want another office. We don't want it to be funded. We want it to be privately funded. Then Governor Reagan did this back when he became governor of California, and it really did produce savings. So, I mean, I think that we have leadership within the state, businessmen, businesswomen, who could help make these tough decisions. You just have to have the will to do it. And I would argue that the governor should appoint that type of task force, because he needs to get the executive departments under control. A lot of them are driving these budget requests. They flow through the legislature. And so even if the governor might want to do some reductions, we may need legislative changes in order to allow that to happen.
Okay. All right. Now, the school choice issue, I know, has been a hot one as well across Missouri. And with you all at the Show Me Institute, where do you think that issue is going to fall this session on the Missouri side of the state line?
Well, again, we're watching it closely. Two things we're watching closely. One is open enrollment, where it allows students to go between different school districts. And then the other is providing public funding for the ESAs. There's a part of me that says, the governor in his State of the State made a commitment to try to get public funding for these education scholarship accounts, which, again, basically allows money to follow the child to different schools. We're hopeful. There are bills that are introduced, and we'll be pushing for them. We'll see if there's really the will. On open enrollment, we're a little concerned. I mean, we're competing against states that are being, again, very aggressive with school choice. And what we're talking about in the state of Missouri is voluntary open enrollment, which means if you're a school district, you can choose to participate or not. And we've seen in the past, unfortunately, with the school lobby, they're reluctant, and I don't quite get it, because it's sort of like, if your school district is as great as you say it is, well, you'll have people clamoring to come to your district. And, if it's not that great, well, shouldn't we know that? And yet they still want to keep their door closed. And, I would say follow the money. I think it has a lot to do with the funding that they want to preserve.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you guys are doing great work, obviously, and we'll keep that pressure on them. Try to keep them honest down there in Jeff City. Brenda Talent, the CEO of the Show Me Institute. Always appreciate the time and the insight, Brenda. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You as well. Brenda Talent on KCMO 95.7 FM. What If Wednesday is coming up. But first, did you hear Anderson Cooper last night talking to Chris Sununu, who was the former New Hampshire governor? He called him something that I don't know if you could say this one on the air. Now, he said it. It was clear as day on CNN. Mark bleeped it out this morning because we're a family-friendly show here. But Anderson Cooper got all rattled talking to Chris Sununu when Sununu was noting the fact that, Doge is doing some good things here.
It's 23 days in here, guys. 23 days. You're talking about $2.3 billion that was saved last year. These guys are saving $2.3 billion a day.
Right, but
it's incredible.
That's what they're saying. But where's the proof?
You're waiting. You're not going to be satisfied till he shows up with 10,000 pages.
But we're talking about 10,000 pages.
Yeah.
He's giving very specific things,
yes,
but he's not actually giving any evidence of that.
It's all going to come, because what they also said was, if we have to go to Congress, we'll go to Congress.
Right, but
we'll show where it is.
Some of the details that have come out, like the $59 million spent on luxury hotels, it's actually not.
You're talking about the FEMA money that was abused for migrants. FEMA money for migrants. That's okay now.
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be the portrayal. What I'm saying is the portrayal by him is just not factually accurate. He's talking about luxury hotels. I'm not as big. Look, I was in Hurricane
Until he sends you a
I
personal
saw what
text,
FEMA
you're
does.
not going to believe it. I get it.
I think the issue, too, is these are congressionally appropriated funds.
First off, Anderson Cooper was making absolutely no sense. Sununu, who is not like Mr. MAGA, he's kind of a moderate conservative, former Republican governor of New Hampshire, is pushing back on Cooper, and Cooper's just totally flabbergasted. He has no real defense, and then he calls the guy the D word. And the best part of the whole video, which I shared last night on X at Pete Mundo, is Jeffrey Toobin is sitting right next to him. Jeffrey Toobin, the guy who was... How do I want to frame this?
Well, he was just sitting there.
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
Chuck Schumer said it best.
Chuck Schumer said it best. Jeffrey Toobin temporarily lost his job at CNN because he was aroused and pleasuring himself on a Zoom call back in 2020. Remember when that thing went viral? He's on a Zoom call. He thinks it's over. He starts, going to the old belt buckle. Jeff, stop! Jeff, stop! Don't do it! Don't do it! Don't!
Harry
no.
Balls.
Jeff, no! Don't go. Oh, he went there. Yeah.
He muted himself, but he didn't turn his camera off.
He didn't turn the camera off. So Jeffrey Toobin sitting at that table last night when Anderson Cooper calls Chris Sununu the D word. Quite a scene on cable news last night. Just stumbled upon it, and it was a doozy. Coming up, What If Wednesday? 3 questions on a Wednesday morning we will get to next on KCMO Talk Radio.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
8:51 on a snowy Wednesday morning across Kansas City. But as Luke Doris noted earlier in the hour, KCTV5 chief meteorologist, we're probably about done with the accumulation, right around the 2.5 to 3.5, maybe 4-inch mark around the metro. There will be more snow in the next couple of hours, but it's not going to accumulate. It's that fine, powdery, needle-like snow, as he put it. So outstanding news, because this thing was being projected at upwards of 10 inches earlier in the week. So with that, let's roll it on a Wednesday.
KCMO Talk Radio. Now on FM at 95.7. It's time for What If Wednesday.
What if, instead of having you on this radio station, there was somebody else?
All righty there, Mark. 3 questions for a What If Wednesday. What is on the rundown, my man?
Yeah, let's roll with the first one. What if Democrats were as worried about balancing the budget as they were Elon Musk?
Well, then Elon Musk would not exist right now. Now, you can also say this about Republicans. That's fair. So maybe the better way to frame it is Congress. But the Democrats are the ones screaming about Elon Musk. I mean, my goodness. Emmanuel Cleaver was going nuts over Elon Musk at this ridiculous rally a couple of days ago, our Kansas City, Missouri congressman. And it's like, hey, man, if you guys did anything to balance the budget, which will, by decreasing spending, lower inflation because you guys aren't printing made-up dollars to chase goods and services and basically competing with the American people to do that, we'd be in a much better place. We have had record levels of spending, especially the last 4 years, and Democrats have had most of the power. Emmanuel Cleaver, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden have had most of the power to do whatever they want. And now Trump gets elected. He appoints Elon to help figure out how to cut spending, and they're freaking out over it. And they're falling for every single one of Elon Musk's trolling opportunities, including when he changed his name on X. Did you see this? Elon changed his name on X to Harry Bowles, B-O-L-Z. And CNN's Dana Bash is doing a serious report on this, which just continues to kill their own credibility.
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, "Democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge."
Well, once again, CNN got it wrong.
Fake news.
It's Harry Bowles, B-O-L-Z. I mean, what is she saying?
Harry Balls.
Huh?
She really emphasized the balls.
And she said Harry. It's Harry, like Prince Harry. That's how you pronounce the name. Harry Bowles. Get it right, like B-O-W-L-S. Harry, Prince Harry Bowles, not
Harry Balls.
She screwed up the first name and the last name over there at CNN. It's like, I know you guys don't report the news, but can you just get the pronunciation right of the man's name, for crying out loud?
She just wanted to say Harry Balls. I mean, let's just put it out there. Let's say what we're all thinking.
I guess. I don't know what else to come to the conclusion on. Because Harry Bowles is not
Harry Balls.
They're two different things. All right, let's continue on What If Wednesday.
All right. What if Gen Z becomes the most conservative generation in modern American history?
Well, the future is bright. I'll say that much. These polls that are coming out, the one that really shocked, I think, a lot of people was the one over the weekend from CBS News that showed Donald Trump's approval rating with 18 to 29-year-olds at plus 12. If that holds, and listen, the old adage is, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 50, you have no brain. That was the age-old adage for decades now. But the 18 to 29-year-old had a higher approval rating of Donald Trump than boomers, than millennials. Only Gen Xers had a higher approval rating of Trump than 18 to 29-year-olds, which is Gen Zers. If that happens, this country may be on the right track for decades to come. Now, I'm not going to make any wild predictions here, but I'm just going to note that if this is the trend right now for the 18 to 29-year-old crowd, then Republicans are going to be in a very good position for many election cycles to come. And this is the generation that got crushed by COVID, that dealt with all of the heavy-handed nonsense of government at the time. And it feels like they're also the ones who lived through all the culture wars on American institutions, traditional values, and they are just punching back. Not pushing back. They appear to be punching back in a big way. What's last on What If Wednesday there, Mark?
What if Travis Kelce decides to retire?
It'll be a sad day. But last hour, Mark read us the quote from Travis Kelce on his New Heights podcast. And he sounded to me, Mark, like a guy who's ready to hang him up. He said in his quote, he, referenced, hey, I got to see how my body's feeling. I played a lot of football the last few years. If he didn't want to go out with that loss in the Super Bowl, he would have made that very clear. He would have said, I'm not going out like that. We're going to run it back. We're going to make another run at this thing. It's not what he said this morning. And if he decides to retire, well, first off, going to save a lot of money. He's a $20 million cap hit next year, but it will be the end of an era. There's no doubt about it. Coming up, there's What If Wednesday on KCMO. Carol Markowitz, you may read her on foxnews.com and you may see her on Fox News. She wrote an amazing piece about the future of our children. I'll share next. It's been a half-decade question now since COVID. How do we get our kids continuing to learn to, like, read and write and just do the basics well in Kansas, in Missouri, and across the entire nation? Well, read a great piece this week from Fox News and New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz, who is joining us on KCMO 95.7 FM in Kansas City. And the article is titled, How One State is Getting Education Right by Going Back to the Basics. Carol, good morning. Thanks for being here. For those that didn't read the article, what is that state and what are they doing so effectively?
Well, thanks so much for having me. That state is Louisiana, which was a bit of a surprise to people. I don't think that people think of Louisiana as a heavy hitter in education, but they really have been for the last few years. And what they've been doing right more than anything else is going back to the basics of how to teach math, how to teach reading, not going for fads or cool plans that keep getting pushed on our schools. And they've really returned to what has worked. I mean, things like flashcards, things like intensive tutoring for kids who need it. The main thing that they do is transparency. No parent is going to be surprised at the end of the school year that his kid can't read. They're going to know along the way that things are a problem and they might be able to get help for their kid.
Now, I grew up in an era in, the 90s when flashcards were a thing. When did flashcards stop becoming a thing? What happened to the flashcard?
Well, it was in the last few decades, a lot of our schools have turned to, again, what I call fad programs. So I'm from New York. One of the things that New York did, for example, is they got rid of phonics. And this actually happened in schools across the country. They got rid of phonics and they went into this program of memorization to read. Now, this worked for some kids. I have 3 kids. My older 2 kids learned to read with the memorization program, no problem. My 3rd kid hit school, and it turns out he has an amazing memory. So he could memorize thousands of words and still not know how to read, but everybody around him thinks he knows how to read. He can't sound out words, and, he went to kindergarten during the pandemic. It was his kindergarten year was school year 2020 to 2021, and it really hurt him. Now, we recognized it. I saw right away that he wasn't actually reading, even though he was able to trick everyone around him. And we were able to get him help. But if you're in a situation where you can't get your child a tutor and where nobody will believe you that this kid is not actually reading, which was a hurdle for me. I had to convince people, like, I know it looks like he's reading, but he memorized everything you told him to memorize. And so these schools have to go back to what has worked. And for example, with reading, what has worked is phonics, teaching kids how to sound out words so that they don't have to memorize the word, so that they don't have to just rely on, I've seen this word before, what does it sound like? But they could actually read.
So with that, I know, your story is one that you've highlighted many times, and many of our listeners will know that story from seeing you on Fox and reading your articles. You're a lifelong New Yorker. You left for Florida during or just after the pandemic. What are the big differences you've noticed between the education system in New York, heavily bureaucratic, versus what you're dealing with now in a much more free and open state in Florida?
So we left 3 years ago. It was January 22, and it was a really difficult decision. My husband and I had been lifelong New Yorkers. We had just finished building our dream house. We thought, that's it. We're going to live here forever, raise our kids here. And then the pandemic hit, and it exposed a lot of things about our school system and about just the culture in New York as well. For example, we lived in a fairly affluent area where, and it was pretty far left, and everybody sent their kids to either open private schools or they got them tutors or they formed pods. All the while they marched for equity, but they didn't care that the public school kids couldn't go to school and that they weren't able to get the kind of education that they could get with private school, that schools were closed. The difference in Florida is that there's a lot less nonsense. The nonsense that I mean is, when my kids were small in New York, they were protesting against climate change. I mean, this is something that public schools in New York regularly do. They have kids march against, climate change or for gun control or generally against hate. They turn them into these little protesters. In Florida, there's a lot of sanity. There's just, I always say this. When I got to Florida, I realized that liberals weren't all, trying to indoctrinate their own kids, that they also wanted what conservatives want, which is a really good education. So in Florida, there's a sanity and a normalcy in the schools that just did not exist in New York and still doesn't. And I love to see it. I think the kids here thrive. Florida education has improved so much in the last decade. It's gotten just the numbers show that it's doing really well. And I think the back to basics approach can work anywhere.
Carol Markowitz, Fox News and New York Post columnist, is on KCMO Talk Radio. So, like here in Kansas and Missouri, they're trending more towards school choice. We're still not quite there yet. But how have you seen, whether it's in Louisiana, who you wrote about this week, or what you're seeing in Florida, how does added school choice improve the education for all students? What are some trends you're seeing on that front?
Well, it's so obvious that if parents have an option to take their kids out of their local school, they'll really only remove them from that school if the school is not working for their kid. It's not, I think a lot of the people who oppose school choice just think that the local school will shut down. And if it will, that means that the local school was not working for the kids. So in Florida, Governor DeSantis passed universal school choice, but so many people stayed at their public schools because the public schools are generally good, and they have the added thing where they can trust Governor DeSantis to enforce the non-woke stuff that he has done in the last, he's been governor for 6 years now. In the last 6 years, he's made Florida schools largely woke-proof. There's teachers, they can't give their personal opinions to the kids about, various nonsense. They have to stay on topic. So a lot of people kept their kids at their local public schools because that's what was working for them. Now, on a national level, it sounds like President Trump is going to push a tax rebate for parents who want to pull their kids from the local public school and send them elsewhere. And I think it's a great idea. I think parents across the country should have the option to get the educational experience for their kids that works for them. Again, wealthy people have always had this. They can always get their kids to what works for them. Why shouldn't everybody have that? And I think that's the message, and I think that that's the correct one.
Well, and it's such a great point to note. School choice has always existed for those of means, right? For those with money. And the irony is that some of the loudest voices going against school choice in our politics and our government oftentimes have their kids in private schools because they have the means to do it. So the hypocrisy always drives me nuts on this issue, Carol.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Corey DeAngelis is a free school choice advocate, and he's always posting all these various politicians who say that they don't want school choice and school choice is going to destroy our public schools, and then they send their own kids to private schools. Well, why shouldn't everybody have that option? Why should the money go to the school and not follow the student? I think it's, again, an obvious thing that the student should get the education that works for them. And if the local public school that usually gets decided by their zip code is not working for them, they should have the option to go somewhere else. And I hope that President Trump is able to accomplish this via tax rebates, because it's a really hard ask to try to get national school choice in any other way. I think the tax rebate way is the way to go on this.
Well, I hope that more people read your piece, and it is an important message for Kansas and Missouri as well. We can learn from what Louisiana is doing and what you guys have going on down in Florida. So thank you so much for being here, Carol. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
You as well. Great work there. I will share that article on X at Pete Mundo. That way you can check it out there from Carol Markowitz, writing for FoxNews.com. Coming up, the roads in Kansas City are what exactly? City Manager Brian Platt will be here to get us the update on that. We'll have our caller of the day as well coming up at the bottom of the hour. And one of the great moments that I saw on television this year came last night. And no, it wasn't K-State upsetting Arizona. It wasn't that, although that was impressive as well. I'll share that with you next on KCMO.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Well, you heard from Luke Doris, chief meteorologist at KCTV5 1 hour ago, and it looks like this storm may come in around that 3, maybe 4-inch mark, so way below the expectations from earlier in the week. But I know the crews are out working hard around Kansas City and the entire region. Brian Platt's the city manager in Kansas City, Missouri. He's on KCMO. Brian, what's the update been on your end the last couple hours around town?
We got all of our crews out servicing all the roads in Kansas City right now. We're thankful that snow is finishing. Now we just need some time to get everything plowed and salted again, and we'll be back in business.
Are you saying the city is open for business today? Is that a fair assumption with, I guess, the snow coming in below what the expectations were?
You know, I think that there's two messages that are sort of conflicting. One is that if you need to get around, the roads are drivable, but we're really asking people to stay off the roads right now just so we can make sure we have space and safety of our drivers to clear all the snow. And also, there's still a bunch of slick spots out there. We are nowhere near finishing the cleanup effort. No one is right now. The snow stopped only a couple of hours ago, but we're working hard on it.
What's your time frame right now on feeling like you're going to have at least the major thoroughfares cleaned up?
Yeah, I think by the afternoon commute, we'll be in a good place. We like to assess the situation usually around 24 hours after the snow stops, 12 if it's a smaller storm. So this is maybe in the 12-hour-ish range to see where we're at. We should be mostly clear with at least the main roads and a lot of the main neighborhood roads by then.
What have you been seeing on the roads the last couple hours, either from your crews or from drivers around Kansas City?
I think a lot of people are listening to your show because when we were talking about staying off the roads, suddenly a lot of cars are no longer on the roads anymore. They're looking good. They're clear right now, which is great. Give us some time to get working on that. I'll say also that our trash service is going to be a little bit delayed. We're just waiting for the plows to do a little bit more work before we send our crews out there.
Well, you just ask your friend there in the mayor's office. He'll tell you how many people are always listening to the show. He'll catch you up on that. For better or for worse, he gets it all the time. Now, with that, what about anything like services from the city, trash, whatever else may be impacted by this snow? Is there anything people need to know on that front?
Yes. We've closed all of our city facilities for the day. Everything is virtual. So if you've got some appointment or inspection or something, just double check with whoever it was to make sure that you can do that virtually or if it's been rescheduled. Our community centers are open as warming centers in case anyone has issues with needing a warm place to go. And other than that, we're focusing on snow.
And how many folks do you have working the plows?
We have about 400 or so people on the team. We do 2 shifts, a day shift, a 12-hour day shift, and a 12-hour night shift. We split it into about 200 in a shift, a little more during the day. That's where we're at. Our workforce is at 4,500, so it's not like we have to shut a lot of things down necessarily.
All right, very good. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate all the work, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot. You too.
All right. That is Brian Platt, the city manager on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. As always, the show is streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So last night, I wanted to get to bed earlier than I did, but, life happens. I never get to bed as early as I want to get to bed. That's just how it goes these days with the 3 little kids and then wanting to spend at least a few minutes with, your significant other. And I'm flipping around. I watched the end of that K-State game. They beat Arizona. They've won 6 in a row. I mean, my goodness, they may make the NCAA tournament, which is just insane based on where this team was a few weeks ago. KU game was kind of a blowout, so I'm putting on the news. And I'm glad I did because I turn on Fox and I see Trump standing outside the White House. And he's waiting for Mark Fogel to return and meet Mark Fogel. And it was one of the more powerful moments that I just happened to stumble upon randomly on TV. Now, I would have seen the clips this morning and the highlights, but seeing it in real time and seeing Trump meet Mark Fogel, who had been imprisoned in Russia for the better part of 2.5 years. For having medical marijuana, half an ounce of medical marijuana in Russia. He's a school teacher from Pennsylvania. He's a regular dude. And he shows up to meet the president of the United States after being released from a Russian prison. It's 10:30 at night on the East Coast. It's snowing in D.C., and Trump's standing there. I mean, suit on, the whole thing. I'm like, when's this guy sleep? The last guy we never saw. Literally, 10:30. I mean, Joe Biden's been out for 5 hours at that point. Trump's standing there waiting to greet a regular American guy, a teacher from Pennsylvania. Shake his hand, talk to him. They have this conversation right outside of the White House. Trump is, and Kate noted this when we were watching it last night. She goes, and I thought it was very well said. She said, Trump, yeah, he might say some dumb things, but he does look like he genuinely cares when he meets these people. And that is exactly what he looked like. You can't fake that, right? I mean, you can fake being a politician on a stage in front of a podium, acting like you care about people. But when you meet a regular person, someone who can't do anything for you, Mark Fogel can't do anything for Donald Trump. There's nothing he can do for Trump. He's a school teacher. And I'm not knocking the job. I'm just saying he's not a billionaire donor. He's not someone who's got any political power in this country. He's just a regular guy. And whether you voted for Trump or not, if you watch that interaction, you look at Trump and you say to yourself, he cares. In that moment, he genuinely cares. Shaking his hand, slapping his back, looking him in the eye, talking to him. And then Mark Fogel goes to talk to some of the other folks who were there outside the White House, and Trump's just kind of watching, standing back, smiling, taking in the moment. And then they walk into the White House, and Mark Fogel talks about, what a great job that Trump did, his team did. He was very complimentary. It did go on a little too long. Like, it kind of felt like an Oscars speech where Fogel's talking. And listen, he's a regular guy in front of the entire world in this moment after getting released from prison. He's nervous. He's emotional. There's a lot going on there. But Trump, in classic Trump fashion, after about 3-4 minutes, you can tell he's like, all right, we got to wrap this up. We got to keep this thing moving. Mark, you've said your piece. We appreciate you, but now we got to keep the show on the straight and narrow. And here's what it sounded like. Trump just brilliantly bails out Mark Fogel at the end of this thing.
I met him. The energy, the can-do attitude just exudes from his body. And when he smiled at me and introduced me and I got the feel for what has happened, it's not just me, it's everybody. And Secretary Rubio, who met my son a while back, I'm a middle-class school teacher who's now in a dream world.
We're going to show you the Lincoln bedroom in a little while. It's a very special place. Appropriate for tonight. Very appropriate.
And thank you all. And I love our country. And I'm so happy to be back here.
Where are the violins? The violins. We love you, Mark, but slow it down, buddy. Come on, wrap it up.
I wish I could articulate it better.
You've done beautifully, and he's got a great mother. And when I saw the mother at a rally, she said, if you win, will you get my son out? And I promised. She's 95 years old. And I said, we'll get him out. And we got him out.
Brilliant job by Trump saving Mark Fogel from himself there. Once in a while, I have to do that with a caller on a much more minor level, where it's like, all right, you made your point. Don't hang yourself here. I'm going to help you. I'm here to help you. That's what Trump did with Mark Fogel, but it was a great and very powerful moment. Our caller of the day on one of our local Congress members next.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
All right, we have been monitoring the roads all morning with our good friend Nathan Brennan, KCTV5 reporter. What are you doing right now, my friend? Where are you at, and how's it looking? Nathan, are you there, my man?
I am here. Sorry, sir. I was having my my mute button was locked down. I'm running every which way this morning.
Oh, hey, don't sweat it. I was just
I-
hoping your star driver there didn't get into some kind of accident, so I'm glad you're okay.
Not dealing with any of that, Pete. It's great to hear from you, and it's great to be in Kansas City right now because I was just speaking with your producer about a minute or so ago, and I don't know if it's just because I'm scarred from last month in January of how bad that snowstorm was, but we're not talking about anything like that. Now, keep in mind, if you do have to head out onto the roads, they're not perfect. You're definitely going to have to slow down, take your time. Don't be one of those yahoos that Pete's always talking about, but we've definitely been noticing some packed snow, even some really sloppy conditions because the snow is just so fluffy and powdery. But if you're like me and you're still scarred from last month's winter storm, we're not dealing with anything like that.
All right, so where are you right now, and where have you been driving around the metro?
Well, we're just off of Southwest Boulevard and 31st Street. You probably know this QT where this is at, just south of downtown. For the most part, we've just been on the Missouri side, and we actually, this quick trip, we just made a pit stop real quick, and we saw, so did some of these MoDOT crews and some of these Kansas City crews, too, that have been out plowing the roads. They were going and filling up their big cups and getting some soda and taking a bathroom break. So great to see them, and we've seen them pass by a couple of times, too. So I know that there are crews out there. They are trying to take care of these roads, and fortunately, again, they're not dealing with any kind of craziness and nonsense that we saw last month.
All right, Nathan Brennan, mostly on the Missouri side, but definitely not even close to what we had a month ago. That winter event still scars many of us, but it's good to know we've only got a couple inches out there. Your buddy Luke Doris at KCTV5 says this is probably it for accumulation, so it sounds like the roads are getting better by the hour, and it'll probably be in pretty good shape by later this afternoon for the drive home if people did go out this morning.
Yeah, for sure. And Luke is a lot smarter than I am, so I would listen to him. He's a scientist. I'm just the guy that they throw out and talk about the road conditions. So if he says that we're done with accumulation, I'm taking his word for it, and I trust him, and I'm thankful that that's the case. But, yeah, if you're heading out today, definitely still be a little bit cautious. We were on I-35 southbound over by downtown probably a couple hours or so ago, and it definitely was slower. I think we're going about 35 miles an hour. So 20, 30 miles an hour under the speed limit is probably going to be pretty standard once you get onto the interstates. Again, heads up, if you're on an on-ramp, off-ramp, bridges, overpasses, things like that, they're going to be slicker than they appear. But for the most part, you should be able to maneuver in and around the metro. And once these plows start making their way across the entire metro, it will definitely be even better conditions.
All right, you're the man. Stay safe out there, Nathan Brennan, and do not sell yourself short because it was like 2 years ago, big bad Bill Hurlbrink was out there, and look at him. He's now sitting warm and cozy in the studio. So there's a big future for you out there, okay? Just keep hanging tough.
I appreciate you, Pete. Thank you as always.
All right, Nathan Brennan, KCTV5 reporter. He's been on the roads for the last 6 hours across Kansas City doing great work. Our caller of the day was tied to the topic of Emmanuel Cleaver, who suddenly has awoken from his slumber. As, of course, our congressman in the 5th Congressional District in Missouri, which is basically Kansas City, Missouri, along with places around Kansas City, Missouri, on the Missouri side of the state line. So he had this bizarre rant 2 days ago at a rally with Maxine Waters talking about musty Elon Musk, which was just weird. I mean, there's a lot of things you could call Elon Musk, I guess. I'm not sure musty is one of them, but to each their own. Then he puts up this tweet yesterday afternoon, and he writes here, quote, "It is deeply disturbing that President Trump, Vice President Vance, and members of the Trump administration are openly advocating for the flouting of federal court rulings. The American people want lower prices, not a constitutional crisis." So, I haven't seen every Emmanuel Cleaver social media post for the last several years. I haven't. But I'm wondering if Joe Biden, when he said the Supreme Court won't stop me, when it comes to student loans. I wonder where Emmanuel Cleaver was when Joe Biden was talking about how the Supreme Court may have blocked me, but it didn't stop me. I don't recall any kind of outrage at any kind of protest or on social media from Emmanuel Cleaver when it came to the Supreme Court and Joe Biden. What's happening right now is Donald Trump is potentially getting blocked by appointed judges, singular judges, who are obviously political actors on behalf of the Democratic Party. That's what's going on. Meantime, Joe Biden got a Supreme Court ruling and basically told the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, 9 members, told them all to pound sand. I'm sorry, I'm not here for your constitutional crisis when it comes to a $2 trillion deficit. I would call that a constitutional crisis. I would call $36 trillion in debt a constitutional crisis. Government workers are not a protected class, no matter what Emmanuel Cleaver tries to say, or anybody else for that matter. And it makes you wonder, I mean, why is there a group of people seemingly on one side of the political aisle absolutely outraged by Donald Trump appointed individuals like Elon Musk looking for waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal budget? Why? That's not inherently a political issue. Democrats shouldn't want our money wasted. Democrats shouldn't want our money being spent on things that are not valuable or beneficial to the American people. So why would they make up this phony argument of a constitutional crisis around any of this? And I keep hearing this point of, well, you know, Trump, he's overstepping himself, and, oh, this is not what people voted for. Actually, it's what a lot of us voted for. I mean, Elon Musk was on the campaign trail with Donald Trump talking about these very issues. Everybody, when they went to the polls, or at least most people, I can't speak for everyone, but Elon Musk was not like a hidden part of Donald Trump's plans when he got to office. The guy was at rallies. He was speaking. He was very active. So the faux outrage from Emmanuel Cleaver and so many others is something I am not buying. And this topic this morning led to our caller of the day on KCMO.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Jonathan's in Kansas City on KCMO. Go ahead, my friend.
Hey, Pete. I don't know if you remember this, but like years and years ago, former Mayor Cleaver and Representative Cleaver, I think he spent millions of dollars on this private car wash. And a bunch of taxpayer money, a bunch of taxpayer money went to it, and it was a huge fraud, and it lost tons of money. You know, I guess in light of that and his background, maybe we shouldn't be so surprised that he's standing up for not doing anything about waste in the government. I mean, it sounds like he might have benefited from it. It sounds like a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I genuinely don't know, but it's a very good call.
A man and a woman.
In the words of Emmanuel Cleaver. There you go. Jonathan, our caller of the day. And think back to 10 and a half years ago. I found the story on the Kansas City Star written by Dave Helling. Bank of America on Wednesday settled a year-long legal dispute with Representative Emmanuel Cleaver over a loan he obtained more than a decade ago to buy a car wash. But the settlement, announced just moments before the dispute was set to go to trial, still leaves Cleaver, his wife Diane, and Cleaver Co. LLC on the hook for more than $1.2 million in future payments to the bank. In a statement, the Kansas City Democrat said the troubled car wash was recently sold and the proceeds were used to pay off part of the original loan. But he said he and his wife still face payments on the debt, perhaps for years to come. Well, yeah, I mean, he's making $175,000 a year. I mean, that's not chump change, but that's a big nut, $1.2 million loan you got to pay back. You're not buying a $1.2 million house on that kind of a salary because you probably can't afford the payment. And this is in addition to whatever his other bills are. Cleaver's office identified the car wash buyer as Rick Kokyuk. Mark, there's nothing to dump. That's his name. I don't know what to tell you. I never heard of the guy. Cleaver's office said the purchase price was about $500,000. Settlement helps the Cleavers avoid a potential embarrassing public trial. In 2002, Cleaver and his wife obtained a $1.3 million loan to buy Grandview Auto Wash on Blue Ridge. The car wash struggled. A year ago, Bank of America sued the Cleavers for defaulting on the debt, which had grown to more than $1.6 million. As the article notes here, he earns $174,000 as a member of Congress. This is a 10-year-old article, but in his latest financial disclosure, he claimed an additional income of $22,000 from his City Hall pension and $9,000 from Missouri Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. His net worth, per public records, between $448,000 and $1.27 million as of 2011. I don't know. I'm just saying it's out there, and Emmanuel Cleaver suddenly freaking out about Doge is not really making him look good, because regular Kansas Cityans on the left and the right would love to know how their tax dollars are being wasted and spent. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line and our text line on a snowy Wednesday on KCMO. I'll leave you with what I would call the most disappointing news of the last 24 hours coming up next.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Well, Laura Kelly vetoed a bill yesterday called the Help Not Harm Act, a proposal to ban transgender surgeries on minors. Third straight year she has vetoed this bill from the Republican House and the Senate. Kansas Senate Bill 63 would have prevented healthcare professionals from providing this transgender care to minors, including puberty blockers, hormone therapy, surgery, everything else. And Laura Kelly's statement is the more offensive part of this than anything else because it's so disingenuous. Laura Kelly saying in a statement yesterday, it is disappointing. Sorry, I'm trying to keep a straight face. It is disappointing that the legislature continues to push for government interference in Kansans' private medical decisions instead of focusing on the issues that improve all Kansans' lives. Because, what, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time? I love how they're framing neutering a child as some type of private medical decision. We don't allow child abuse in first world countries in 2025. And that is exactly what this is. If you're an adult, you do you. No one is saying that when you're an adult, you cannot do to your body what you so choose. We don't let kids drink. We don't let them get tattoos. But suddenly, they can mutilate their body. Infringing on parental rights is not appropriate, nor is it a Kansas value, says Laura Kelly in this statement after vetoing this bill. As I've said before, it's not the job of politicians to stand between a parent and a child who needs medical care of any kind. Oh, my God.
I'm getting pissed now.
You gotta be kidding me. This legislation, she says, will also drive families, businesses, and healthcare workers out of the state, stifling our economy and exacerbating our workforce shortage issue. Yeah, if I can't chop my kids' nuts off, I'm out. Said nobody ever. You really think there's going to be a flood of Kansans leaving the state because of this? This is living in a fantasy world from Governor Kelly. You got to go out. I know it's snowy, but go touch some grass and realize that this is now like a 70-30, 80-20 issue is what this is. In Kansas, it might be an 85-15 issue. And Laura Kelly, who won 2 straight terms in office, God bless her, as the middle-of-the-road candidate, is saying, go ahead, mutilate your kids, and have a grand old time doing it. Not wait till you're 18, wait till you're an adult, wait till your brain is fully developed. Nope, just go ahead and do it to the kids. Under the guise of politicians not being the ones standing between a parent and a child who needs medical care. Please. Oh my gosh. It is just a disgusting way to frame this kind of conversation. Now, I'll leave you with this on a lighter note. Speaking of people who have been neutered, did you hear this anti-Trump song that is breaking out at rallies and protests around the country? I don't want to do this. I didn't want to do it right before the end of the show because we might lose a lot of our audience going to Keatsman's show, which I don't want to do to him. But I had to hear it, so now you have to hear it. Here we go.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against George. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on?
I love the hook.
Which side are you on?
Sing it to me, sister.
Trump's coming for our unions. He wants us all to fail.
Is that Elizabeth Warren?
He wants us to bow to him, but we want him in jail. Oh! Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? on.
Tell me.
They say in the capital city there are no neutrals found. You're either with the Union or a scabby musk bloodhound.
Oh!
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
All right, turn this crap off, Mark.
Which side are you on?
We're done with this. I'm done. Can you get a better lead singer at least? Mark, would you let that lead singer in your church band?
No.
Okay. Even if you were super
Better
desperate.
than Shabuzi, Keesman says.
He said, better than Shabuzi. Well, I don't know if she put a bottle of liquor to her face like he apparently did the other night. But, man, Republicans have a chance to really win for a long time coming here when that's what you're up against. All right? Don't screw it up. You do the work on behalf of the American people. You continue to have stuff like that going on the other side, and you've got some runway here to work with. Just keep working hard, and the American people will reward you, especially when that's the other option. Oh, my gosh. And with that, I hand off a zero audience to Kevin Keatsman, who's next.